All right, let's kick things off with a quote that honestly gets right to the point. We're not talking about spies in trench coats here. We're talking about something way more fundamental, the battle for how you see the world. So today, we are going to unpack a really fascinating and pretty controversial theory that comes to us straight from the Cold War. We're going to try and see the world through the eyes of a former KGB-trained propagandist who said he knew the exact playbook for ideological warfare. This is Yuri Bezmenov's theory of subversion. So here's the game plan. First, we'll get to know the man himself, Yuri Bezmenov. Then we'll break down his four-stage plan. We're going to look at each piece, from demoralization all the way to crisis, figure out what he meant by that strange word, normalization, and stick around till the end for his really surprising idea for how to fight back. So who was this guy, Yuri Bezmenov? Well, on paper, he was a journalist for the Novosti press agency in the Soviet Union. But that's not how he told it. To him, that was just a cover. He described it as a propaganda and subversion front for the KGB. So, in the early 70s, he makes this huge move and defects. But here's the thing, he wasn't carrying military secrets or blueprints. He believed he had something way more dangerous, the actual strategy for psychological warfare. And it's his first-hand account of how it all worked that makes his theories still so talked about today. And that gets us to the big idea he was trying to warn everyone about. Ideological subversion. The way he explained it, this isn't some quick blitz. No, it's a slow, patient, long-term game. The goal is to completely change how a country sees reality, so much so that its own people can't even recognize a threat to their own way of life. And the tools they used for this, they were called active measures. And yeah, you can just forget the whole James Bond, spies in trench coats thing. Bezmenov claimed that the vast majority of KGB resources didn't go into spying. They went into this. A long-term psychological war aimed right at a nation's schools, media, and culture. Okay, so how does this whole thing supposedly work? Well, Bezmenov didn't just have a theory. He laid out what he called a clear four-stage blueprint, a process that builds on itself step by step. And here they are: demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and finally, normalization. Think of this slide as a roadmap for the next few minutes. We're going to keep coming back to it, because according to this theory, these aren't just random events. They're a deliberate sequence. All right, let's jump into stage one, demoralization. This is the absolute bedrock of the whole strategy. And you've got to understand, this isn't a quick hit. This is all about playing the long game. How long are we talking? Bezmenov put a number on it, 15 to 20 years. Now, why that specific window? Well, think about it. That's about how long it takes to educate one full generation, right? The whole idea is to introduce them to a competing ideology from the time they're young. And here's the really key part. The goal isn't just to present new ideas. It's to do it in a vacuum without a strong defense of that nation's own core values and principles. The endgame? A generation that, as Bezmenov put it, is essentially programmed. They literally can't process facts that contradict the worldview they've been given. Now, Bezmenov wasn't the only one thinking like this. The source material often connects his ideas back to an Italian Marxist thinker, Antonio Gramsci. Gramsci had this theory of cultural hegemony, which was basically a long march through the institutions. The idea was to slowly take over a society's key cultural pillars, schools, media, art, to make a radical ideology feel like just plain old common sense. So who helps this process along? Bezmenov used a really chilling term, one he reportedly borrowed from Lenin: useful idiots. He said these were people inside the target country, think well-meaning intellectuals, influencers, artists, who actually believe in and promote the ideology. But, and this was his stark warning, once the old system is gone, these same people, with their critical thinking, are seen as a threat to the new regime, and they get discarded. And this really shows you how it's supposed to work on a practical level. You know, objective reporting tries to show you all the angles, give you verifiable facts, and let you think for yourself. This kind of propaganda, though, it does the opposite. It creates simple good guys and bad guys, pushes an ideological story, and wants you to align with it emotionally, not critically. Okay, so after all that slow, patient work of demoralization, decades of it, the whole process suddenly hits the accelerator. Things start moving much, much faster. We're back to our roadmap, and now we're highlighting stage 2, destabilization. After those 15 or 20 years of laying the groundwork, this stage, he claimed, happens fast. We're only talking 2 to 5 years. So here, the focus shifts. It's not just about ideas anymore, it's about infrastructure. The targets are the very things that hold a country together: its economy, its relationships with other countries, its defense systems. The point is to make the nation seem chaotic and broken, to make its own people lose faith in their institutions. And all of that chaos leads directly into stage 3, crisis. This is the breaking point, and it happens with, well, breathtaking speed. 6 weeks, that's it. That's the terrifyingly short amount of time Bezmenov said this crisis stage could take. And this could be anything: a civil war, a total economic collapse, some kind of foreign intervention. It's a massive, catastrophic event that brings the country to its knees, creating a huge power vacuum in a population that is desperate for any kind of solution. So, that vacuum is created. What rushes in to fill it? Well, that brings us to the final and maybe the most cynical stage of this whole blueprint. Stage 4, normalization. Now, don't let the name fool you. This is not about getting back to the way things were. It's about a new, and often radical, reality becoming the accepted, everyday norm. And where does that term even come from? Well, it's pretty dark. It's straight out of the Soviet propaganda playbook. After Soviet tanks rolled into Czechoslovakia in 1968 to crush a reform movement, the official Kremlin line was that the situation had been normalized. See? It's the language of control just dressed up to sound like peace and quiet. Okay, so after painting this pretty grim picture, what was Bezmenov's solution? I mean, how is a society supposed to defend itself against something like this? His answer is, well, it's probably not what you'd expect. It's not violent, and it's actually deeply personal. It boils down to this: have faith in what he called moral superiority. Now, he wasn't talking about being arrogant. He meant that a society's ultimate defense was to be rock solid in its own foundational principles, its moral values, and its belief in objective truth. Essentially, don't get sucked into fighting every little lie. Instead, just strengthen and believe in your own foundation. And that leaves us with this big question to chew on. Yuri Bezmenov laid all this out 4 decades ago, right in the middle of the Cold War. The world is obviously a very different place now. So, how might his ideas about subversion, about the battle for perception, give us a lens to understand the crazy information world we're all trying to navigate today? Something to think about.